Podcast. We're back, baby! After a week, the 2 weeks since we watched the Thunderbolt episodes of Hulk Hogan's terrible show. Tonight, Kevin Dunn sucks with special guest Drew Thundercock, sitting here right next to us. I'm your host, the man of 1,004 names, Tyrell. Better shots than Kevin Dunn. Find me on Twitter at 1,004 names. Someone else want to go with their intro, or?
I'm Killer Greg. You can find me at KillerGreg17 on Twitter. I was admiring your work, Ty. I'm sorry. You've done such a tremendous job setting up our stream that I was distracted.
It's actually a Kevin Dunn shot that's so blurry that you can't see it. That's what's.
Is it randomly zooming in and out? Because that would be real classic.
It would be, but I can't do a GIF on something like that.
Yeah. Hey, this is Megastar Mark. You can follow me at Megastar Mark on the tweet machines, and let me introduce our guest. Okay, I want to give him a proper introduction. All right, Las Vegas Raiders fan. Okay, professor of all things heavy metal, author of 2 books, right? 2 books, and Emmy award-winning associate director, Dr. Drew. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm well. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on.
We are very excited to have you on and add some, Greg kind of brings things down in terms of the class department. So we're going to have you kind of bring the classiness of this podcast up a little bit. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay, because Greg, we can't spend all episode talking about the Kiss Demon again.
Why not? Give me one good reason.
Oh, no.
See, Drew remembers.
I remember that.
See, you know what, though? Actually,
do you remember when he went blah?
Yes. Yeah. And I remember that was somewhere, and I'm probably crossing the streams here, but that was somewhere in the vein of, like, we're desperate, and we're going to also get the No Limit Soldiers. And, yeah.
That might have been literally the same. That might have been the same pay-per-view.
Yeah. That was pretty close to it.
I need Kiss, and I need rappers. Go!
Was that before or after the 6 month of Chucky?
Oh, after. Chucky was like, I think, a last ditch attempt.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Chucky messing with Rick Steiner. Now, actually, Drew, you were
Rick Steiner. Anyway.
You were a WCW fan, is that right? I mean, I remember when. Yeah. Right. So tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about, like, what you remember of WCW, like, who are your favorites? Like, take us through that. Take us through your WCW fandom.
Well, I think as a very young kid, everybody's like a WWE fan, right? Like, that was, for children of the 80s, that was a golden era. And then I kind of fell away from it for a long time. And then when I came back into it, it was sort of at the height of the Monday Night War. And if you turned on Raw at the time, you could watch some dude who came out to the Oklahoma Fight song in a boxing match with Mark Marrow, or you could flip it over, and WCW had, like, this gregarious excess, right? Like, you had Diamond Dallas Page, and there were dancing girls for no reason, and they were in these giant arenas, and Karl Malone was driving a tractor trailer, and, like, there were all these weird stunts that were better than watching Mark Marrow not wrestle, by the way. And so, like, WCW for a while, it seems ridiculous in retrospect, but WCW for a while was sort of the king. Like, Goldberg was big, and they had all the luchadors. Like, I was a luchador fan as a kid, so, like, you had Rey Mysterio back when he was young. You had, I was a huge Ultimo Dragon fan. And then, and, like, Raven was cool, and Diamond Dallas Page was cool, and the whole affect worked at the time. And that was before the NWO had spiraled into, like, 30 members and 9 factions, or whatever the heck it ended up being. That was before the LWO, unfortunately. The greatest arc that never saw a logical conclusion. And also never a logical beginning. No real loss there.
We have a big bit about how every LWO shirt somehow goes, all the sales go to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and I will have you know, then some of those sales came from me, because Mark got me an LWO shirt at some point as a gift. I wear each year if I'm at somebody's house for the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, and then it goes back into, like, hermetically sealing.
Now, you were a big fan of La Parka too, right? I always remember talking to you about, say, the chairman of the board.
May he rest in peace. Like, there's never been a guy who had a better gimmick of, like, not talking, hitting people with a chair, and, like, being overweight and doing a goofy dance that everybody loved.
Yeah.
Like, I can't explain to you why it worked, except that it worked.
Yeah.
I will say, La Parka is still alive. The other La Parka that died was not the La Parka.
Oh, wait,
There's 2 Laparcas.
Yes. There's like 6 Laparcas. It's like...
Was
2
one
Laparcas, 12 Villanos.
Yeah. The Villanos, there's so many fucking Villanos out there. But no, the Laparca is still alive. The chairman of the board is still kicking around. He's still standing on a chair in like some sort of conference room somewhere with a chair being ready to just smash someone.
I assume everybody of that stature goes back to their home country and becomes an elected representative. Is he like Senator Laparca now?
Guaranteed.
Vote Laparca 2020.
I mean, could we be that lucky?
He's got to be a mayor or something.
Right.
Where do they make
Tijuana.
all the
Oh,
chairs?
Tijuana. The chair capital of Mexico. That's where you want to be in life.
We got the drug cartel on one side, the chair cartel on the other.
Oh
Constant faction wars.
boy. I watched that movie. Yeah. Hands down.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, when you look back, Drew, on WCW, were there any wrestlers that you really gravitated toward? I mean, you mentioned a whole bunch there. Was there or any moment that you really if I said WCW, that just pops out of your head immediately?
The one, and I know it was an awful decision for a million different business reasons, but the Hogan-Goldberg title fight, that was one of those moments where I stayed up late against my parents' wishes and watched that fight anyway. And fight, but and I understand, like I said, as you read the documentation later, the amount of money they lost by putting that on cable TV instead of pay-per-view TV is staggering. But as a fan who didn't have the money to buy a lot of pay-per-views, and most of the WCW pay-per-views were crappy anyway, that was a huge moment in my formative teenage years that you could actually watch the heavyweight championship of the wrestling universe between arguably its 2 biggest stars of the moment happen on regular television. That to me is the one that sticks out in my head. And there's a bunch of goofy ones, like when Scott Steiner had the fake doctor, when
That's Greg's favorite.
That's man. That's amazing.
When Raven kidnapped DDP's wife, when Billy Kidman got clean. There's a bunch of random moments in the history of WCW that stick in my brain. The best of 7 between Booker T and Chris Benoit, which
right.
Oh yeah.
Talk about Chris Benoit, but that was this great series of matches. Those are the ones that stick out in my brain.
I have a question for you, Drew. Was there something that 50-50, were you more of a WCW or a WWE guy?
Depends on the moment, and let me make a quick aside, because obviously everything on the internet is a lie until you can prove it. There it is. Thanks to my wife for bringing that into the room. It's real.
I was going to ask if I didn't see
We
it.
just got Chris Hansen. Oh man. So
the real thing.
was there a breaking point to where you went from one show to another? At what point did you where you're WCW is just oh, this is meh, but WWE, that's where it's at.
I don't know that in retrospect it's that I was driven away from WCW so much as WWE got a lot better. By brilliance of programming, it always happened that at 11 o'clock when Nitro and Raw were supposed to go off the air, Nitro was contractually obligated to get off the air at 11, and Raw would always go 7 or 8 minutes past. And in that last 7 or 8 minutes that you could get Monday Night Raw was usually when something interesting was happening with Austin or The Rock or some other preeminent star. And so slowly, because let's face it, part of the death of WCW, at least in my opinion, is that WWF comes back at the same time. They're still WWF at that point, right? They haven't changed?
Yep.
Yep.
And they come back at the same time, and they get 2 of their single most marketable stars in the history of the sport happening at the same time at the height of their power. And regardless of what WCW was doing, and I think if anything pushed me away, Todd, to your point, it was probably their psychotic push of Sid Vicious. All of a sudden, Sid Vicious was and what were they called? Psycho Sid? All of a sudden, Psycho Sid was the greatest wrestler in the history of wrestling, according to WCW and nobody else.
I think not anybody else. I'm pretty sure Mark would also agree with that.
Drew has his opinion. They may be wrong, but Drew has his opinion. Go ahead, Drew. No, you're right. Go ahead.
Sorry.
They were like, this is our A guy. And oh, by the way, we've kind of ruined Goldberg, both because we've oversaturated him and now we've hit the worst possible thing that could have happened, which is an eventuality under which Goldberg was forced to speak. And at the same time, his character was sort of a one-trick pony. And then it was the inverse of the Mark Merrill boxing situation, right? Like, you flipped over WWE and there was something more compelling happening than what WCW had to offer. Now, whether that was a product of, like, bad writing or whatever, it's that ebbed and flowed, and that tide just went back to sort of its territorial home.
Makes sense. I mean, yeah, like, the entire, like, programming with WWE was so insane at the time. And especially with that last 15 minutes, like you said, like that last 7 minutes, where it's like, well, you know, Nitro's over. What's going on in Raw? And it's just shit's going crazy. Like The Rock and Stone Cold are just going like banana pancakes on each other. It's insane.
Right. And from purely like a television nerd programming standpoint, like that was a huge win for USA at the time because now they've carried their audience into their next quarter hour. So, you know, their rating, when it gets to these sweeps periods or whatever, their rating from 11 to 11:15 looks gigantic relative to Nitro's, which falls off because the show's no longer on the air.
And that'll help with marketing? Is that the idea? Like, obviously, ad revenue is higher if you... Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And you know, in whatever show USA would try to pump into that 11 o'clock slot that would start later, which I'm sure was guaranteed, like, they could then go to an advertiser and say, we are carrying this amount of audience from Raw into the first quarter hour of this show.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, you know, your first quarter commercial breaks go up. Like, it was a smart move by USA to allow WWE to act more like a traditional live sporting event.
It's funny you...
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was just saying, like, it makes so much sense. Like, I didn't even think about it that way. It's like, oh yeah, if we go 5 minutes over, you're gonna get the next viewing. Like, people are gonna like just keep on watching, you know, whatever USA shows next, like Royal Pains or whatever. It's like, yeah, they're just keep on watching that. But
you know, one of the things you learn in the television business is, and I don't know if it's true, but you always hear it sort of anecdotally, is that the most expensive commercial time on any regular week in television is the commercial break between the end of football on CBS and the start of 60 Minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. No, it makes sense. See, I always remember when I was watching Raw, and you talk about that show that comes on later. It was the one that always pops in my mind is La Femme Nikita. Like, I know it's such a strange thing to say, but I remember that 27 years later, however long it's been, later that show came on after Raw. So they did a great job, I'm sure, with like because that show should not have been around for as long as it was, but it had that Raw lead-in, you know. So people were sticking around at least nominally for the first part of that show, which helped it out tremendously. So I mean, to your point, it works. You're right. I mean, it definitely did a good job of keeping that show going on, or whatever else USA decided to put on.
Do you remember? And I'm going to get way off on a tangent now. Do you remember when? Was it UPN or after UPN became Mine Network or whatever it was, or CW? Somebody tried to bring back La Femme Nikita. Like, years
it was just called Nikita at that point. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think it was a CW.
I fundamentally had an issue with that show.
It's always a CW.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with the production of that show, I don't think, but like every episode trailer for that show had the woman who played Nikita like doing the classic like twist of the neck to kill somebody. And that woman probably weighed like 88 pounds. Like, I just don't know if she could have generated enough torque to actually sever somebody's spinal column. You know what I mean? Like, but anyway, these are the things that bother me. So.
Listen, if Pedro Martinez can throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, that little girl can snap a neck. All right?
I mean, well, leverage, right? But
I'm sorry, what was it? 93-mile-an-hour fastball? I feel like that's a Pedro Martinez classic. But it had a lot of late motion, just like her.
So Drew, before we move on to like more current day product, who were your boys? Like, who were your favorite wrestlers back in the day? Like, when you first started watching wrestling, either WCW, WWE, whatever, who are your like who are your go-tos? Like who are like the reasons you started watching?
Do you
Sid
mean
Vicious.
do you mean in my childhood or in sort of my second iteration as a wrestling fan?
Like let's start with first. Like when you were a kid. That's fine. Yeah.
When I was a kid, and I think it's because my grandparents were dairy farmers. When I was a kid, I loved Hillbilly Jim.
No, Hillbilly Jim I think is mad underrated. Love that guy.
And until he gets to the point where he becomes like the racist leader of those hog farmers or whatever, like I'm all in on Hillbilly Jim. Somebody tell me what the name of the hog farmers were. They had a goofy name.
The Godwins.
The Godwins. Thank you.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed how Hillbilly Jim started his career as a simpleton who Hulk Hogan befriended because he was representative, this is true, of what McMahon thought the WWE audience was. So he's like, hey, one of you is doing very well. One of you is also 6'8" and 300 pounds and a trained wrestler, but he's one of you because he's a hillbilly. So that's how that started, by the way.
I like how the WWE always goes back to Hogan and McMahon. It's like,
oh yeah.
Well, and you know, I remember Hulk Hogan said in some documentary at some point, like, the reason he went by Hulk Hogan is because Vince went to him and was like, "You're going to be my Irish guy."
Yes.
Like, Vince was all about that. He still kind of is, although I think his finger's off the pulse of that a little bit. But anyway,
No, it's the exact same pulse. He'll go up to Roman Reigns, and you're like, you're Roman O'Reigns now. You're the Irish guy.
50 go Gamora, brother. Aaron go bra.
You guys are Vikings. What's hard to grasp about that?
which maybe only Mark and I remember when Paul Burchill was a pirate. That was the greatest gimmick that should have been and never was.
Yeah.
Right.
People loved it. It was fantastic.
Thank you, Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Honestly, yes.
That gimmick failed because McMahon didn't get it. He's like, pirates are supposed to be bad guys, pal. Why are you good? Why do the fans like it? That's true. So he killed the gimmick. Like, what the fuck, man? They were printing money for you.
Pirate Paul Burchill was built because of the the guy from no, not even Pirates of the Caribbean, because of the pirate from Dodgeball.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the dude from Dodgeball who was pretending to be a pirate. It was like, oh shit, yeah, let's just do this. Pirates has already been out. This is a Dodgeball thing because it was goofy and fun. But Vince was like, pirates.
Anyway, I didn't actually answer your question. So Hillbilly Jim, and naturally the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh yeah.
And then I think as I come back later into my later years, like La Parka, the Ultimo Dragon, Rey Mysterio, like a lot of those luchadors were just fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
You know, it was a totally different style of wrestling. It wasn't like wrestling in the '80s when I was a kid was all like the body slam was the end all be all, and it was just two giant dudes wailing on each other. Like it was kind of like one of those old tough man competitions, but organized. And so to be reintroduced to it sort of via the luchador was just a complete change in affect. I was a Raven fan. I was a Goldberg fan. I was a Diamond Dallas Page fan, which it's hard to be both a Diamond Dallas Page and a Raven fan, but I was. And then, eventually, like, Stone Cold, to me, like, Stone Cold is one of the 5 great philosophers of history. And as a character, I love the idea that he's the living embodiment of the desire to beat up your own boss, which is sort of the American dream.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Definitely.
So, like, and, all the greatest wrestling characters are guys who aren't really acting, and I'm not sure Stone Cold was really acting. Those were my guys. Like, and Mark will tell you, I loved the Boogeyman. I think I was the only one that did.
No way. Yeah,
because that was at a time when like everybody's wrestling gimmick was sort of the same. They were all kind of like edgelord characters, like Randy Orton, different Randy Orton copies. And then like this dude would just come crawling out of smoke with a Flavor Flav clock on his neck and bash himself over the head with it, and start spitting worms at people. And I was like, yes, this like if you're gonna have professional wrestling, this is what it should look like.
And that's interesting, Drew, because like right after the Attitude Era, which is ruthless aggression, that's what the name they've kind of assigned that era being. They were very cookie cutter coming out of developmental. It was always like that Mark Jindrak, Randy Orton. You're right, like chiseled guy, like basic pair of trunks, 6'6", somewhere around that neighborhood. But that was it. They had no personality. Like I can rattle off a whole bunch right now of the guys who are the exact same ones. So when you do get somebody different, it's shocking. And I can tell you, guarantee, that did not come from McMahon, the Boogeyman. No. That was somebody. No, he would not have gotten that.
He had to have come with his own character.
Did you guys ever hear the story about that?
No,
I think
go ahead.
it was at whatever it used to be for a training area. The Boogeyman came out and he did like his like crawl and bash and worm eat thing, and everyone in the audience like ran except for I think it was Santino.
Okay.
Who sat in the thing and just fucking laughed his tits off because it was fucking hilarious. And he got fucking berated, like slapped the shit out of because he was not scared of what he should have been scared of.
Yes, Jim Cornette slapped him.
That's right. Cornette, yes.
Yeah, right. Of course he did.
There's no more likely character than Jim Cornette.
Fucking Cornette.
And Mark will also tell you, and Greg, you may have heard this from me a few times too, my synopsis of Randy Orton coming to the ring. Because Randy was the most I despise Randy Orton, and I've never met the man in person, but I despise his character. And when he used to come to the ring and he would have just like t-shirt and basic trunks, and I think I said to Mark at one point, like he looks like a college underclassman girl going to bed. Like that's how he's dressed.
Oh man, that's
he's
classic.
Still kicking, man. Current product, he's still going. Him and Rey Mysterio.
At some point, he earns my grudge and respect because he's managed to do it this long and not had to change. But I just can't.
Yeah, he and Edge just had the world's greatest wrestling match last pay-per-view.
I adore that they called it that before it happened.
Yeah. Because that's, like, it was Edge trying to wrestle, and Randy were like, fuck off.
It's like you strolling up to bed at night and be like, tell your friends you're about to have the best sex ever.
12 seconds later,
and then
crying.
And then Randy Orton just rolls over and just like, nope.
No.
You will jerk yourself off tonight, buddy.
Turn up the old Dikembe.
All right, Randy. This is the last night.
Thanks, Edge.
If you guys want to continue, my wife just got home. I'm gonna say hi to her and be right back.
We never see him again. Oh my God!
He's gone.
Camera off. He is gone.
He's gone though.
So Drew.
Yep.
All right. So we've talked about the past. Let's move on to the present.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The current products.
Yeah.
I've sent you. I know you don't watch it. I know you're not a regular viewer of it at all. But I have sent you clips.
Yep.
And I've sent you texts and I've shown you videos. Tell me, from somebody who is in the industry, give me your synopsis of the way it's filmed. What has changed with wrestling since the last time you were, avidly watching it?
Well, and let me begin by saying, when you send me those clips, I kind of hate watch them because I know they're going to infuriate me, but I watch them anyway.
But that's why I want to. I'm always impressed by your opinion on these things. So that's why I feel like it's great to pick your brain about this.
And let me just throw this out there for informational purposes. A brief rundown of the kind of stuff I've worked on that gives me some semblance of a basis on which to critique another professional's work. College football, major conference, minor conference, men's and women's college basketball, baseball, softball, boxing, international and domestic soccer. I've worked on the game side, I've worked on the studio side. So I've been around for a minute. I've worked on a bunch of different stuff. And despite how small our industry actually is, I don't know Kevin Dunn. I've never met him. I don't know anybody who knows him. I know a couple of guys who have done some freelance work for WWE on events that I presume Kevin has directed, but I don't, they're not in the control room with him, and I don't know if they've spoken to him personally beyond whatever his camera meeting is prior to the event. And if the rumors are true that some of the reason he cuts the way he does or produces the way he does is because Vince is over his shoulder telling him that's what he's got to do, then he's a little bit hamstrung, if that's the case. So throw that out there that he's got a little bit of plausible deniability, if that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that bothers me most about the way that the show is presented now is that as a director, producer, associate director, whatever it is, the absolute number one cardinal rule all the time is that you don't want to get in the way of what it is you're trying to show people. Like the event should be allowed to speak of its own merit. And you hear that, and that's part and parcel with the idea that you're also trying to show the viewer whatever is most important to them in that moment. And as a director, that's the hard part of the job, is you're trying to judge what you feel is most important and what the fan feels is most important at the same time. And so the problem with the way it's cut now is that it is distracting from what's most important. And I have a little bit of sympathy for Dunn, because obviously he's in a position where, like, if you're doing a title boxing match and some dude throws a punch and he just whiffs, like he just catches air. He throws an overhand right and just catches nothing. Like, that's on that guy. Dunn is in a position where he can't make his sport look bad. And so I kind of understand what he's going for sometimes. Like, that's why he cuts a lot on impact, because he wants you to sense that impact without having to actually see the contact that it makes necessarily. And so he can't make his performers look bad, because that makes his sport look bad. It decreases the credibility of his sport, which wrestling already requires a suspension of disbelief. And if he does something to violate that, that makes his entire industry look bad. So I have a little bit of sympathy for him there. And also in the fact that he's obviously trying to preserve, there's a theater aspect to professional wrestling, and he's trying to preserve that too. You can't just, like football or basketball or whatever is a competitive theater in and of itself, but it's not as much about the individual performers. It has less of that stage presence aspect to it. But getting back to the major question of what you asked, like, I feel like the primary complication with the way the product is presented now is that the line cut interferes with what it is the fan at home wants to see.
I think that's accurate. I mean, I'm glad to hear you say it in kind of putting it in technical terms, because when I watch a current product, I find it, maybe I'm comparing it too much to what I remember wrestling being. And I know everything evolves. Like, that's just the way life is. Like, totally. And a lot of the stuff I have responded positively to. But I can't watch a wrestling match nowadays and not be jarred out of my seat. It's hard to focus on what's going on. And I feel like the whole presentation is very artificial. And I know that's weird to say about professional wrestling, because, it's obviously choreographed and planned out to a certain extent. But the fact that I haven't been able to lose myself in a wrestling match probably in 15, 20 years to forget that it's fake. And a lot of that is because, when I feel like I'm watching a sporting event, I've never watched a football game where they just keep zooming in and out to like a quarterback's face. I've never seen where they're a running back or a basketball player is running down the court and the cameraman's behind him, like bouncing the camera up to simulate motion. So it's those type of things I feel like are very distracting. And I know that you bring up a great point, Drew, about how this isn't really a sport. It's more theater than anything else. But even if you're filming this as a movie, I feel like those are distracting characteristics of how you film. Like, I wouldn't want to watch a movie that's jarred all over the place. I've seen Cloverfield. I got sick during it. So, like, it's like that type of thing I feel like sometimes limits your enjoyment of a product.
Yeah, and professional wrestling's closest corollary in terms of how you would shoot it as a sport is probably boxing.
Okay.
Certainly boxing or MMA. MMA has a little bit different rules, because obviously there's an actual cage, and that prohibits some of your angles. You have to get over the top of the cage or you're going to get blocked. But boxing is probably the closest analog. And if you watch a title fight, or if you watch any reputably produced boxing match, it's all shot from the up cameras. almost exclusively. And,
Mhm.
and please forgive me if I use jargon that's confusing and you need me to clarify something, but it's Ty, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
Oh, I love that. Why'd you
The,
tell him?
the cameras.
He could have done that the whole rest of the thing.
Yeah, cameras. The cameras that are up. I know that. I got that one.
Yeah. But the whole thing in boxing, like the only part of boxing that's shot from the handhelds is the entrances into the ring and maybe some interstitial elements like in between rounds or at the very start of a round, you might walk a handheld like from the judges table and then over the top and into the ring. But then you're pretty much shooting from your up cameras the entire time. And if you watch any of the modern WWE productions, he is working his handhelds like crazy. Now, I assume they're RF. They might be wired. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But like he's got those dudes running around all the time. And if you shoot low like that, I understand he's probably trying to make them look bigger. He's probably because if you shoot low like that and you're shooting up, like somebody's going to look more heroic.
Yeah.
From a handheld lens, and you also get that sort of like Bourne movie organic shaky cam feel because those dudes are not on sticks. But he uses his handhelds a ton. He works those guys like crazy, and they are not all steady rigs. Like a lot of them, I think, are just straight up handhelds because you see them in the other show.
Absolutely. You talk about wired. You see people like choking people out with the wires, like
Right, absolutely.
constantly. So it's obviously they're all handheld, but it's weird to see
Yeah.
you
But
know,
if you
go
watch-
get in there, and then they're like using that little toggle on there, like zeep zop, zeep zop, zeep zop to get that
Yeah.
zoom in, zoom out. It's
Yeah, he gets the Wayne's World zoom on. Um,
whoa.
but if you watch like a title boxing match, they will never go to the handhelds ever.
No.
MMA doesn't either, and especially because you're physically blocked by the ropes. Like that comes right across in the foreground of your shot, no matter what you do. Now, I understand in Dunn's case, he's got a lot of stuff that happens on the apron or on the outside of the ring or by the barrier or whatever. And in that case, yes, shoot with your handhelds all day because otherwise your up cameras are going to be blocked by the fans. But if it's in the ring, like to me, he relies on his handhelds too much once it's actually in the ring. And he has an incredible habit, and in any kind of fighting, there's a certain amount of this that's unavoidable, but he has an incredible habit of flipping the plane of vision, and he'll do it multiple times. Like, Mark, to cite an example, the one you sent me the other day of the superplex with the 10 different cuts in it.
Yeah.
He flips the plane of vision like 6 times in that sequence, which is, dude A is on the left, dude B is on the right, and then he will cut to a camera where they're reversed, and then back, and then reversed, and then back. And that is incredibly hard for the viewer at home to follow who's who.
Right, that's basic filmmaking. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's like an inherent rule in any sort of visual medium.
Right. And like, again, in fighting, you're going to have some of that just because of the way the guys move around each other, and you could get caught in a cut somewhere that you didn't anticipate that Pacquiao and Marquez were going to switch positions in the ring. There's a certain amount that's unavoidable. But he does it almost by habit to the point of distraction.
Well,
So that might be the most basic egregious flaw in the production that I see on a consistent basis. He is asking the viewer to process a ton of information very rapidly.
I know it's terrible. I know it's not the way you should do things, but I think it's along the lines of the way action movies have been shot for like the last even like 10 years, where like you talk about the I was gone for a few minutes, so I don't know if you guys brought up like the Taken 3, where there's the Liam Neeson.
Ty, we didn't bring up Taken 3.
where Liam Neeson jumps over a fence and it takes 16 shots. So if it's just about a matter of masking kind of the stunt work in it. Maybe when we do like bigger things, and once again, not that I'm trying to like make excuses for Kevin Dunn, because this dude fucking sucks. But like when you like camera 1, camera 2, go 3, go 4, 6, go 7, 8, go 9. Like where it's like go. Maybe it just makes more excitement when you see, I don't know, like Kurt Angle go to superplex the Big Show off the top rope. I mean, I'm not saying that when you like start wiggling the camera around, that's not bullshit. But maybe it's more of like trying to make it more of a stunt show than it is a sports show.
There is a school of thought, and that's why the two big things I wonder is one, who is his technical director, or is he doing it himself? Because his technical director either has to have some crazy macro setup to be able to do that, or that guy's hands can fly. If that is a separate person, that person is underpaid. And the second question is, I would love more than anything else to sit in on one of his camera meetings. Like, I want to know what he tells his camera guys to do and how much warning they have before they're going to catch a tally. Because every now and again, and if you're going to cut that off, and it's going to happen, it's part of the risk you take. If you're going to cut that off, and you see it every now and again where he will get like a whip pan or a power pan where somebody is clearly moving off of the shot they had or still settling into the shot they're trying to get. And so I wonder, like, is he telling them, you know, this is what the sequence is going to be? It's going to be, you know, 1, 2, 6, 7, 1. Do they know that? Are they guessing? Like, I would love to sit in on a camera meeting and find out what he's telling these guys. But Ty, to your point, there is a school of thought that says the number of cuts you have impacts the amount of emotion that you're trying to convey and the sense of immediacy in what you're trying to show people at home. And the example you always get is like a car pulling into a driveway. You could do that in one shot. You just see the car from a medium distance, car pulls into the driveway, guy gets out, goes into the house, done. But it's a different sequence if you show the car, you show the car on the road from behind, then you show the driveway, then you show the guy's eyes as he sees the driveway, then you show the steering wheel, then you show him hitting the blinker on, then you show the steering wheel turning, then you show him hitting the brake, then you show the car coming in, then you show the tail lights lighting up, then you show the door open, then you show the 1 foot get out. Like, you can create, and that sequence creates an entirely different emotion than if you had just one shot of it, car into the driveway. And that there's credence to that school of thought. There's a lot of adherence to that, but it's entirely contingent on what you're actually trying to show. And if you're going to make those cuts, they've got to be smart and they've got to be the right cuts. And again, like, it's sort of the Michael Bay school of directing, right? Like, if you're just cutting 100 times every minute, you're going to lose people because they can't keep track of what you're trying to show them. So if you're going to do that, then that's why I wonder about the camera meeting, because if you're going to do that, you have to communicate that to your operators in advance. Like, this is my sequence, this is what I want to show.
I think one thing that always pops into my mind here is, Drew, what you've done a deep dive into, like, kind of the technical aspect of this.
Yeah, that's
but
amazing.
It seems to me,
oh, so good.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. What it seems to me, though, is if he's viewing the WWE product as a movie or a theater type of program, he's not doing it correctly there because of the quick cut and, like, everything switching into point of view. But if he chooses to film it as a sporting event, he's also not doing it correctly because it's hard to maintain and hard to follow, and he's using, like I said, different low cameras, like you were mentioning. So, I mean, is this guy? I'd be blunt. Is he just bad at his job, or is he being controlled? Do you think, how much of this do you think, like, it must be somebody else talking to him? Because how do you fail at both genres? Like, I mean, does that make sense?
Can I borrow you for 1 second before you answer that one, Drew? I'm sorry. Like, would it be easier for you as a director to be, like, doing a wrestling shoot and being like, listen, every single time someone goes to the top rope, you go 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, or is it something you call on the fly?
Situational. Depends who it is. Depends on where you are in the match.
Well, remember, you're directing wrestling, so it's like you always have characters going. You always have like 3 always is the main on the ring. Right. 2 on one side, 1 on the other side. So 3, 1, 2, 1, go 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 go. So is it more like is this something that we are being led on as we watch wrestling, where it's like, if you watch it, you're like, and you realize, like, oh shit, yeah, this is them just, like, doing the same thing over and over again, but just with different angles or whatnot?
I think it's the kind of thing where that's a conversation you would have both with your technical director and with your camera operators before you ever got in the show. But I don't know, outside of, like, specific big moments, I don't know that you would individually script each of those. Like you would definitely have in your camera notes for, let's say, to use your example, let's say 2 is your game camera, for lack of a better term, your game camera, and 1 and 3 are your other up cameras. You might tell them, 1, if a guy goes on the top rope on the north side of the arena, make sure you get his eyes. Like, I need to see his face, I need to see his full body on top of the turnbuckle or whatever. And, then you would tell 3 on the opposite side, you might want to say, I want to see if he's on the north side of the arena, I want to see the perspective of how far he is from the target. Like, that's the shot I want from you. Like, you would set up all those kind of things in advance, but I don't know that you would have the bandwidth to tell those guys, this is the order I'm going to shoot them in. But you would certainly tell them what you want the shots to be in different situations.
Well, obviously, I haven't seen, like, I've not, like, put this to anything, but would it be easy for us to be, like, main thing, so it was, like 1 is this one, so you know what the Kevin Dunn shot is, where it's, like, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1. So every single time, I mean, wrestling is different, obviously, every single match, but, if you know a wrestler is going to do a top rope superplex or something like that, you can say, we're doing the Kevin Dunn shots, we're doing the Dunn. So, wait for it, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1. Like, is that something that,
Yeah, you could certainly set up, if you had a regular pattern like that of something that you knew you were going to hit on, yes, you could absolutely set that up in advance and everybody would know it's coming.
Something like the WWE, I think that we've all seen.
Yeah,
No.
and the guy on the top rope, some of it inevitably will be situational, like the guy on the top rope in the first minute of the match is different than the guy on the top rope after he hits his finisher.
Of course, you wouldn't call for that, like, midway through the match. It would be like a finish thing.
Yeah,
here comes the finish, here comes the Dunn.
Yes.
3, 2, 1, 2, 1.
Yes, and everybody would know what that is. Like, I've done all kinds of things and worked with all kinds of directors where they have a code word for, when I yell this out, everybody goes to this shot and stays there until I clear everyone to do something else.
Poop shark, get on Hogan! Go, go, go!
You'd be amazed the number of terms that people use. Sometimes it's their kids' names. Sometimes, it could be any random thing that you wouldn't otherwise hear on the comm channel because you want it to stick out in people's memory. It could be, when I yell pomegranates, everybody goes to shot X, Y, or Z. So yeah, there are sort of magic code words that people use for go to this, go to that, go to this, until I tell you to do,
When I say Lex Luger, everybody fall asleep. So Drew, I got a question for you.
I will say, as a quick caveat, the one you hear most often that gets the most immediate response is if somebody in the stadium or in the arena, if it's open air, yells lightning, that means all your cameras are going to shut down.
Yeah.
Because that means there is lightning in the area, and due to safety standards, everybody's just going to let go, bag the camera, and get inside.
So it's like literally, it doesn't even matter if you've seen lightning at that point, you just shut it down.
Yeah, a lot of places are legally required to.
Cool, interesting.
Strange.
Like the schools or the conferences or the leagues or the company or whatever will all have their own safety standards. And I mean, obviously, you generally have a hint that there's a storm coming, but and you should know about when. But as soon as somebody, as soon as it's within that, either somebody in your weather watchers or whatever will come on and be like, "There's lightning within so many miles in so many minutes, and it's time to bag," and everybody's just gone.
Nuts. That's interesting, yeah.
So Drew, when I was doing some research for the show, I noticed that Kevin Dunn from 1984 through 2003, right now he's the executive vice president of television production. He's got some title, and makes way more money than I do. But you know what? I like to give him some props.
More money than any of us, I'm pretty sure. Maybe
from
maybe not Drew, I don't know.
From 84 to 2003, he was a line producer. Can you tell us what that is? And because I've never heard that term before.
Most sports don't typically have line producers in the traditional
Interesting.
Time. And that's assuming that he's filling the traditional line producer role, which is if you're on like a studio show or a stage show or something, the line producer is the one who sort of executes the movement of all the talent and feeds them what's going to be happening. So literally, like if you're in a Hollywood set or whatever, like you always hear the joke, somebody looks over to the side and yells line, like that's a line producer that's feeding them that information.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, how that applies in wrestling, I'm not sure. I wouldn't want to speculate too much. I don't know if that means that, you know, he was just the guy in the chair actively producing, or if he was actually like out there in the arena, you know, giving people cues, almost like a stage manager, like giving people cues, you're going, then this happens, like controlling the run of the show.
mm-hmm. Because, you know, in the research I did, he has, during that time span, in a ridiculous amount of other jobs, you know, working in the booth, a lot of other things, but that one just stood out to me. So it seems like McMahon always, like, you always hear the stories about him never wanting to acknowledge that it was wrestling. You know, wrestling was bad. It was
sports entertainment.
Sports entertainment, right. So it's interesting that line producer was an actual job, because it seems to me that would be the guy that would help him a little bit in the booth, where he would know, okay, when Stone Cold says this, then that's your cue for, you know, Triple H to come down and take up the next 20 minutes.
And that's if WWE refers to line producer by the convention of the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because a lot of times when you get into like independent companies that are doing their own productions, like those titles get blurred a little bit. You know, like even, you know, like my technical job title is associate director, but that means different things at different companies.
Gotcha. So,
so quick question here.
Yeah. And don't worry, I'm going to go full on breakdown in a minute, but keep asking questions.
I have some Mark's, like Mark sent me his stuff here. I mean, he wants to know what the difference is between like filming live sports and WWE or wrestling sports would be. And I think we've covered that a little bit. You know, like what do you think, like what's the difference? Like, is it more like filming an action scene, or is it more like filming actual live sports where you just kind of like go with the fly? Do people know what you're supposed to be filming, or is it like go 2, go 3, go?
Now, to me, one man's opinion, and I'm biased because obviously I work in sports and have for a number of years. But to me, it shouldn't be any different than shooting a live sporting event. And that includes, and listen, it's got its own flair. Like when they do the big, not this COVID year of WrestleMania, but the 2019 WrestleMania, when they do the huge intros with the big virtual effects on a jib, like those are really cool. You wouldn't get a ton of that live in a traditional sporting event. Like you see, Sunday Night Football does it. You know, they do those huge virtual graphics where it kind of looks like the guys are rising out of the field, and then there's usually a stat in between them or whatever. Like that's a big Sunday Night Football thing. So WWE really pushes that virtual live envelope, which is cool. But by and large, to me, the actual matches shouldn't fundamentally be any different than shooting a live sporting event. And I know that the real difference is obviously going to be the emotions and the reaction of the performers. Like, you want to see their faces, you want to see their eyes, all that kind of stuff. But, like, say LeBron comes screaming down the lane and you know, he throws it down on Karl Anthony Towns and gets fouled and he's going to the line, like you're gonna have your ISO camera on LeBron to capture that reaction anyway. So like
absolutely.
That infrastructure is already built into the live sports framework. It's probably not as emphasized as it is in wrestling, but like, you know, a lot of the college football stuff I've worked on, like you've always got a camera on the quarterback for a reaction. Always.
So
But
can I
already exists.
So can I ask you, like, what's your opinion on the current trend of, like, pre-recorded, like, filmed wrestling matches? Like, we've seen in the WWE in the last, like, you know, how many months between, like, the Boneyard match, stuff like that, and the, like, AEW doing their, like, obviously, like, pre-recorded matches. Like, does does the idea of a pre-recorded wrestling match affect your view of wrestling at all?
No, and me personally, like, I'm completely mercenary about that kind of thing. Like, if they can do it and it enhances their product and they get a product out of it they like and the fans like it, do it. That doesn't impact me in the least. Like, it's not the same to me as watching a tape delay of a basketball game, or like the next day's re-air of a no-hitter or whatever, where you already know the outcome. Like, part of the suspense is obviously you don't know the end. At that point, it becomes more like a dramatic television show. But I also don't, if that's a place where they really feel like they can control the environment and they can control the product, if it works for them, by all means do it. Like, that doesn't, to me in that scenario, like back in the day when they used to tape, what was it? They used to tape Thunder. Did WCW tape Thunder?
Yep.
They used to tape Raw too. I mean, this is all
right.
Like, even looking back at when they were like Mick Foley's gonna win their title tonight on Raw. Like, this is not even that long ago. It's like we all knew these things.
Right. And to me, like, so long as you don't even have to, like, wink and a nudge that. So long as you shoot it, like, to me, I would still go into it shooting it as though it were live. Like, the Price is Right famously is what they call a live to tape show. Like, they might record 6 shows in a day, but they tape them like they're live. And then whatever gets edited gets edited. But, like, they don't go back and redo parts if somebody says the wrong thing or whatever. Like, they can fix that in post if they have to. But to me, that would be a live to tape scenario. But it doesn't fundamentally bother me if it works for their business to do it on tape. It doesn't bother me in the least.
Well, I mean,
do you think?
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think, Drew? Like, why would there be a reason to switch from something that worked in the '90s? Because we can all agree that a lot of these things are more recent issues with the WWE, the zoom shots, the herky-jerky motion. When we were, in the 90s, when you had, like, The Rock and Austin headlining WrestleMania, you didn't have that. And business was never better. Is there a logical reason to switch over to this new style other than maybe, like, personal preference of McMahon? Like, is there a reason for this with different technology or anything like that you can think of?
Some of it is personal preference, almost certainly. Some of it may be, because we've had this discussion, we have these discussions all the time. Some of it may be trying to present a product to a younger audience that is more used to seeing media on their phones or on smaller devices, or
that makes a lot of sense.
That may have more of those elements in them intentionally. A podcast or something where there's a lot of rapid fire motion, those kinds of things. So some of that may be trying to modernize the product for a younger audience. Now, whether that's successful or not, there's a whole bunch of different schools of thought on that. But that could be part of it. And honestly, like, and you guys would know better than me, is some of it that their stable of talent is not as automatically magnetic as it used to be, and they're trying to make them look more exciting than they actually are.
My initial guess on that is not so much the talent, but I think the industry is so much safer now that a lot of the impact has been taken away, and they're trying to replicate that somehow.
I could see that. I mean, because you put Stone Cold on a medium shot and just let him do his thing, and in the absence of that, you're going to try and impart that same kind of kinetic energy into it, and it may not be there by, to your point, like a corporate choice.
Right.
No, like Greg said, like the idea of like Stone Cold like winning the crowd over versus, I don't even know who even to bring that up with, Seth Rollins doing a body slam and the camera going, oh my god, look at how much he fucking killed that guy.
I think just, the most, how do I want to put this? The thing that caught fire the most over the last few years was when Becky Lynch legit got punched. And, like, you can't, like, they were still safe back in the day, for sure. But they weren't quite as safe. I think legitimately there was more impact. Like when you did a pile driver on somebody, when you did a spine buster, like it looked like it fucking hurt. Nowadays they're gently putting each other down to the ground.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's more like of what wrestling has become, where it's like a matter of like there's no finishers anymore except for your finishers. So you need to make the spine busters look like they're rocking the entire arena.
Right.
You know.
And the finishers don't mean what they used to either.
And also, I mean, maybe this is looking too deep into it. When things no longer have a thematic impact, you have to find something. And like that's what all this is to me. Like,
oh yeah,
just this watered down product that they don't know what to do with, so they're desperate. And frenetic cuts is a way to at least, on a very base level, inject excitement. Whether it works or not is something completely different. But 1 million people go see those Transformers movies, and they're visual garbage.
Yeah.
So, maybe it's just smart people like us that are bothered by it. Like, are normies upset that Kevin Dunn does his super zooms? I don't know.
Yes, they are, because I used to be subscribed to the Squared Circle subreddit, and they were all fucking about it.
They're not normies.
Yeah,
they're like
not
normies.
No, Reddit is the most normies.
No, listen to me. Any single person who goes online to talk about wrestling is not a normie. Like, the people who come in to buy a Roman Reigns pops, they're the normies. The ones who buy DVDs at FYE.
This is a...
Normies.
FYE is closing real soon, so we need to, first off, figure out who normies are. This is a conversation for another podcast. All right. No. WWE is terrible. They cut things is awful. Drew was right. There we go.
That was a car crash of a sentence, Ty.
Yep.
Anybody who goes to a subreddit called Squared Circle and is not looking for boxing probably isn't a normie.
Let me say this though, Greg. Maybe you can tell Drew this story because I don't think he's ever heard it about the percentage of people who come into your store who legitimately think, who still believe like wrestling is still wrestling. You told me that story once about people who almost everybody knows it's fake, but they still. There's a part of them that says like, "Oh yeah, do you see what Roman Reigns did?" Or "I really hope he gets that guy at the end." That really surprised me.
Well, I think the big line of delineation there is that everyone knows wrestling is fake, but I think some people buy into it still as like a storytelling medium is maybe the better way to put it. Like everyone knows Star Wars is fake, but we still talk about Star Wars as it exists in its own thing. Not many people talk about what John Boyega was feeling the day that he recorded that scene where he was pretending to be a stormtrooper. Whereas like wrestling, there's this whole section that just watch wrestling. It's like Roman Reigns is the good guy. They don't give a shit that he's a bad wrestler. They care that he's the good guy. And then there's a whole section who care that, oh, well, what's going on with Roman Reigns? That what did Vince say to Roman Reigns before he went out to the ring to make Roman Reigns say this? So, like, there is a very huge subsection of wrestling fans who don't think about this type of shit at all. Like, the idea, Kevin Dunn isn't even a sniff on their radar. Like, they don't know anybody. They know Vince McMahon. They know Roman Reigns, So to me, like this is a fucking smart person conversation, and I use smart in the most liberal sense possible.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Well, and then I don't think that's unique to wrestling. Like we talk about that all the time in the different sports that we do. Like we might come out of a college football game going, damn it, it was 3rd and 7 in the red zone, and I cut this great sequence, but I left out the ISO of the quarterback. Nobody at home realizes that we left out the ISO of the quarterback. Nobody cares. Like. They like it. People like it when we show it, but only we know if we don't show it. Like nobody at home is going, boy, I would have loved to see the quarterback there. Like not typically, And I have to remember that when I'm watching sports at home, that like I will want to see a react shot from somebody, and it's like, well, nobody. I'm the only person out of 1 million people watching this game who's dying to see the react of that, or thinks they should have gotten to the replay faster, or that the first replay they went to was wrong, or whatever. Like. I am in the distinct to Greg's point. I'm in the distinct minority about the things that I recognize and don't recognize.
But I feel like that's important to note, because when I'm watching wrestling, there are parts where I realize, like, you know, if I'm watching something and I don't pay, you know, like, that was a great match, I really didn't mind that they missed that shot or whatever. I've watched wrestling and seen them miss plenty of shots. You know, like the most famous one was when Edge debuted back at Royal Rumble.
Yep.
They completely miss his spear. Like, how do you? That's his move. Like, how do you miss that?
They focused on Roman Reigns' fucking face, and it was like, and then Edge was like, I'm murdering dudes in this ring. Roman Reigns was like, oh, I'm like really fucking tired right now, guys.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mark, because I'm going to go shut this window because it's raining in my window, and then that was the clip I was going to break down.
Oh, awesome. Drew,
not,
I'd love to hear it.
And not for the reason you thought.
Okay.
The egregious, but that's sort of easy to break down. Give me a second.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. How are your sexy girl statues doing, Ty?
What's that?
How the
they're
sex? I'm
fine.
talking to Ty. Yeah, they're good.
They're uncummed on, so
Positive.
Okay,
So a slow Tuesday for him.
no, I don't. All of my cum stays in either my wife or my tube socks. That's how it goes. I wish we weren't doing this now when she can hear me saying this.
Greg's not going to make it.
Well, I will see you guys whenever podcast is over. Thank you very much.
Our new host, Drew.
I like that those are your only two vessels. Oh, I'm sorry. So we're breaking down a Roman Reigns thing.
So
Here's your lead-in, Drew. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go right ahead, buddy. You've earned this.
Star Wife.
Yeah.
Sort of. So Edge at the Royal Rumble, which the part of that is easy and is unforgivable is that you missed the spear. I mean, that's everybody knows that. That, you know, that's the kind of thing that's egregious enough that the average fan at home realizes that they missed something.
Drew, do you have like a link for this? Because I can bring this up on screen. We can do this together.
I don't have it handy, but I can certainly try and find one.
No, don't worry about it then. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, because I mean, honestly, it would go better if we could pull it up. But
All right, give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple quick things
I
here.
wasn't sure if there were going to be visual aids.
We're getting small. We're doing stuff.
You weren't prepared for this presentation.
I was not.
Where's your PowerPoint, Drew?
But as I mentioned to Mark last night, I have my show notes. So
All right, that's more than I have. Ever.
All right. Do you have
Ever.
a YouTube link or anything for this?
let me see. I got
Just fucking Google it. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're on the same fucking page, Greg. Fuck. This is really turned into a WCWTF podcast episode here, real quick. All right. Let's see. Edge Royal Rumble 2020. That's the one, 2020, right?
Yeah.
See, the issue is unseen footage.
Right. The problem, what you have to be like weary of, is that they may have edited it since then.
Yeah.
That's like a real WWE thing to do.
That's true.
I'm watching it now to see if we can see it or not.
All right, I'm just gonna pop it in here. I mean, going to unpin that. Do that.
That wasn't a
here.
good one. You definitely see the spear.
That was a weird one.
I
Ignore
hate the
me!
revisionist history of like WWE now.
Oh, it's terrible.
Horrible.
Like it just
Here we
drives
go.
me mad.
Yeah, it's true. You probably don't know about that, but WWE will go back and re-edit, like 1984, they're like all of their old videos to make themselves look better if they fuck something up.
I thought we were talking about revisionist history like how Stephanie never married the Undertaker.
Or Arnold was never the WWE champion.
Arnold was the champion. He retired undefeated. He may still be the champion.
Yep.
Man, Edge showing up at this Royal Rumble was like one of the best things in the fucking world.
It was pretty
And
hype.
And that's the thing, like, somebody who had been gone for so long, he has what the I mean he's got a handful of moves, but the spear is so iconic with him, and he runs in all full of energy, and you know what's coming. And here's Roman Reigns.
Here we go. Hold on. All right.
Which is, and
Here
it's
comes
always
he's,
Roman Reigns.
He's going in. Oh, it's always
AJ
Roman
Styles.
Reigns.
When AJ Styles showed up, we didn't see any entrance.
Yeah, Drew, I'm not sure if you saw
that's
that
not the
one. I don't think I ever sent it to you, but like it's AJ Styles, who, you know, huge independent star, TNA wrestler, the guy that never went to the WWE, goes to the WWE, debuts at a Royal Rumble, his music hits, and they cut to Roman Reigns in the ring for, I'm not joking, 30 seconds.
A long time.
And the crowd is cheering and going apeshit, but you don't know what the hell's going on. You don't know who just came down, and they cut it away, and like his logo is not like shown properly. It was just horrible because we got to see what Roman Reigns' reaction is.
Right. They acted like we would know whose music that was, except it was his debut.
This wasn't like the Warriors music hitting. You know?
Right.
Yeah, I wish I would have done this. I would have prepared like some more stuff for this, but I cannot find.
Oh, it's okay.
What it was. Yeah.
But anyway, I can break it down from memory.
Break it down.
So, like, and especially the clip was like whatever it was like on WWE on Fox or whatever the account was that broke down Edge's comeback, and it was like, oh, we're so excited about this, and they put the clip of the original line cut, and like there's multiple parts about that bother me. The spear is obviously the most egregious part, but the errors start almost immediately because in the clip you see like it starts and the counter's down to like 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, whatever it is. Buzzer goes off, and the four guys in the ring at that point, they clearly know it's about to be Edge. They've been told already number 21 is Edge because they just magically have laid out. They have all set it up so that they're all laying in like disparate corners of the ring where nobody can get to anybody, and they're just going to stop for this moment to happen. So they know. Buzzer goes off. Edge's music hits. I'm still seeing the four guys in the ring. As soon as that buzzer goes off, the first cut should be your wide shot of the entrance ramp, if not before.
It should be. It should be.
Music, and then you miss Edge's run out because he goes from that cut. At this point, the music's up, but he goes from that cut of the four dudes in the ring to like crowd shot, crowd shot, crowd shot. Crowd shots in that moment are BS. They mean nothing because the crowd doesn't know what's happening either. Like, yes, the crowd knows it's Edge's music, but at that moment, that's all they know. And
that's not what everybody else knows, though. Yeah.
And at this moment, again, this goes back to, as a director, you want to show the most important thing that's happening in that arena to the fan at home. The most important thing that's happening in that arena at that moment is what's going on at the entrance ramp. There's nothing else happening in that arena that matters. Nothing. And you're just showing crowd shots of people who don't know how to react because they don't know if what they're hearing is real yet, or it hasn't registered. And then in the meantime, like, somewhere in the midst of like 4 or 5 crowd shot cuts, you get one brief cut of Edge sort of like running sideways. So you've already missed his initial emergence out of the smoke. And listen, I understand if you are saying that you can't see him in the smoke, that's fine. That's part of the mystique. You should be showing the entrance because you want to see who comes out of that smoke. Showing the smoke will build the tension of whoever is going to walk out of it. That is still like every 2 seconds as a director, you're saying, is this the most important thing? Is this the most important thing? That's constantly what you're reevaluating. And we talk about that a lot in soccer, right? Because soccer develops over the course of 50 or 60 yards. And the people at home who watch soccer want to see that development. So if you're going to cut away from your game camera in soccer to show, a challenge on the ball or whatever, you have to judge that it's more important than the play developing as a whole. So, like, unless that charge is like a star defender going after Messi or whatever, or he really upends a guy who's coming in hard, whatever, like, you're going to stay under wide camera because it is more important for fans at home to see that play develop for 50 or 60 yards. And in this case, no matter how long you have to sit on that smoke in the entrance ramp, there is nothing more important happening in that arena than whoever is going to come out of that smoke, whether it's Edge or not. And so to just cut around to a bunch of reaction shots of people who don't realize what's going to happen or something that hasn't happened, and then you sort of miss his entrance, and then you cut back, do a bunch of other shots. Now, eventually, he lands the right shot, which is he's get Edge on a handheld in the rampway, just as he summons his pyro, and then he cuts in time to see the pyro at the back of the stage. And because of the smoke, I'll forgive him for this, because normally you would have that shot with Edge with the pyro behind him. Because of the smoke, there's no way to frame it. You wouldn't have been able to see the pyro behind Edge, it just would have been clouded out. So I forgive him for having to cut to a different camera to show the pyro. That's just the way it works because of the smoke. But, and then of course you miss the spear. But, it's, I can hear the voices of bosses in my head. As soon as Edge's music hits, they would be screaming, how come I'm not seeing Edge? That's got to be as soon as that buzzer goes off. And it's not like, I find it hard to believe that nobody in that truck knew that Edge was at 21 or whatever the number was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody should have
Who?
Whom?
Whom?
People should have been.
Schmidge.
The big one. It's the one we can't miss.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that goes back to, I would love to sit in on his camera meeting, because did he tell, are the camera guys aware that Edge is coming at 21? Because they need to know. Because they need to know where to be. Especially your up camera, who's going to be shooting that entrance ramp. Probably two of your up cameras, because you've probably got one on the opposite side of the arena as well. It might be blocked by the big scoreboard or whatever, but you've probably got the equivalent of a high end zone camera that can also shoot that entrance ramp. Both of those guys, as soon as they're within 30 seconds of 21, they should be swinging that way. And if you didn't tell them that in a camera meeting, that's a problem. And if you're not screaming that at them in the truck anyway, that's a problem. And then listen, if you're telling them and they don't get there, and this happens, I've been on shows where you miss big moments because your camera guy either has a technical failure or he just forgets or brain lapses or whatever. That's on the camera guy. But that's a moment you cannot miss.
I feel like you're really relying on the fact that the WWE just nails all these moments, because they are real terrible at it.
Right, but to me, that's the most egregious thing that happens with frequency.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You're gonna the miss of the spear is unforgivable for 10 reasons, but in the course of a live sporting event, that's once a year that's gonna happen. Just because somebody gets punchy, or somebody gets out of themselves, or somebody takes their eyes off the program monitor and doesn't realize that the spear hasn't happened yet. So, you're on shot 3 of the sequence when you should still be on 1 because you got ahead of yourself. That's gonna happen. But to miss an entrance, to me, is actually the larger error. It's that, those camera guys have to know when it's whatever Edge's number was. I think it was 21, but whatever that number is, they've got to know that that's a big moment. They don't even need to know who it is. They just need to know that's the one in that entire match that you can't screw up.
But it also really shouldn't matter. I mean, at the end of the day, the Royal Rumble is all about entrances.
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't matter whether it's the President of the United States or Carmella. It all matters. You should know what's going on.
The only thing that changes there is how long you stay with it.
Right.
But yes, to your point, every time that buzzer goes off, there should be an immediate cut to the entrance to at least show who's coming out. And then if it's the Brooklyn Brawler or whatever, you're like, here he is, we've established that he's coming into the ring, cut back into the ring because something more important to the viewer is happening. But when you're debuting one of your Hall of Fame superstars after 9 years of being away, you can't miss that. That should have been your shot for the next 30 seconds. It's just him coming out. The crowd reaction is not important. His reaction to the crowd is important. And so you get his moment where he comes out, you get his moment where he reflects with the crowd, you get his moment walking out of the smoke. All of that is the most important thing happening in that arena, and we missed all of it.
And to me, there's no way the booth didn't know or the cameraman didn't know. The way that company is micromanaged from everything that we hear, where everybody has everything so planned out, especially in this day and age. What do we say at that point? That they're just bad at their jobs? How do you? There's no way that they couldn't have. They could not have known. It's just impossible to me. So I feel like, Drew, we're stuck in this situation here where we have to boil down to are these guys just bad at what they're doing, and will the product dramatically improve when they're gone?
I'm gonna add on to the Mark question. is it a matter of about like are they just terrible, or is it about them like when someone comes out important like Edge 21 number 21, this is gonna be a big one. Focus on Roman Reigns. Focus on whatever big guy we need. Like, is it more about like just being like really bad at it, or like them trying to focus on a certain character or a certain like storyline? You know.
I see what you're saying. It certainly could be. And listen, if in that moment, Edge probably a bad example because he hasn't wrestled in 9 years.
No,
But,
I'm not trying to make it like any like
Right.
like any like
So,
no.
like-
They suck.
so,
They suck a dick, but that's fine.
Well, like let's throw a for instance out there. If Edge had come out and like Christian and or Gangrel are in the ring for whatever reason, like there's room in that sequence to cut their reaction because they have a long history.
Right.
Like if you remember, what was the Royal Rumble where they renewed the Roddy Piper Jimmy Snuka feud?
I can't remember which one it was, but that you're right. Like the
yeah,
ring stuff. Yeah.
Like
Yep.
that was shot correctly, and especially because in that sequence, if you remember, there's a shot of CM Punk like lying down in the corner where he's supposed to be passed out to give these guys their moment, and he is visibly smiling, and that's an important shot to get. Like the fan at home needs to know that CM Punk is a fan of this too, and that's where you pull back the curtain on the difference between like wrestling theater, wrestling's real, wrestling's fake. But like in that moment, that's an important shot in that sequence. So yes, Ty, to your point, there could be a, hey, if A, we also need to make sure that we document B, C, and D, but it has to be contextually appropriate.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's,
if Reigns and Edge had an ongoing feud, or if they had previous history, absolutely.
Right. Or if this went somewhere, like, okay,
Like,
now Reigns is working with Edge for the next 3 months.
Right, yeah.
It's still not the best way to do it, but at least then there is a purpose behind the action.
Yeah, and especially, and forgive me if I've lost track of who held the title at one point, but like,
Right.
if Reigns is the sitting champion at that point, there's an idea that Edge, of course, would be an immediate threat to his championship. So
it was
yes,
Borg Laser. Borg Laser. It's always Borg Laser.
right.
In the last 3 years, it's been Borg Laser.
So, like at that point, if you've got the champion out there, or some dude that, if you want to foreshadow that a little bit, that, hey, we're going to set up this guy with this guy, but you can't do that until you've established the guy. You know, like you can't shoot the team wins the championship, and they always shoot the celebration running off the bench, and then there's always that cutaway of somebody bumming because they lost, right? Like you always mix that in there too, but you can't show the person who lost until you've established who won.
I think the issue too is like, you know, we have the luxury of retrospect here. That didn't go anywhere, the Roman Reigns or Edge thing. Like it didn't lead to anything. So like when you look back on it, it just doesn't make any sense of what other than, and this has come up a lot in a lot of communities, a lot of wrestling communities, is Vince McMahon is so in love with Roman Reigns. So he's got to be the Hulk Hogan. So even in the 90s when Hogan was like, 90, 91, when Hogan was kind of, Hulkamania was running strong, you did see this. Like in the classic Royal Rumble that was held in Albany where Ric Flair won the title, Hogan did not win that match, but Hogan ended up being the main focus of that match because that was the star. So that in Vince's mind. So I'm wondering, like, is that what we're at here? Like, is this still the Vince needing to micromanage everything and take this one guy and say, like, this is the guy? Does it, all the other stuff is just ancillary? This is the guy you need to focus on.
I'm gonna take this from you, Drew. I apologize, but I mean, it kind of has been. I mean, between like he has not been the guy who's been like focused on between like the main dudes. But he's been the main focus between him and Randy Orton, which, holy shit, let me tell you how much we as wrestling fans need to see fucking Edge versus Randy Orton a dozen fucking times. But yeah, I think this may be like just them not necessarily being like against the top guys, but just as what we're doing as a company. Like look at these guys. Look at this show. Look at the pinheads doing a fight as opposed to what should be the actual big thing, which is the title matches. Just so we can have these two dum-dums fight nonstop.
And Drew, you mentioned really briefly about reaction shots, because that's another big complaint that we see online and in the community. WWE tends to go to those way too often. Like, in the middle of a match after, like, just say a suplex, you get a reaction shot of somebody in the crowd doing, like, the shocked face, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a point in, say if we're just talking about sports here, is there ever a point where you really need to show the crowd other than after a victory or after... I mean, would you ever consider cutting to something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Can and have. Like, when you're doing your 3rd and 7 in the red zone in the fourth quarter, team's down by 5, and they're marching in, like when you cut your sequence and you're saying, all right, here's and you start wide, you start wide on your up camera, so like you would start on camera 3 or whatever, and then you're like, all right, here's where they are on the field. Here's the quarterback's eyes. Here's the linebacker who's countering the quarterback's audible. And then if you've got time before the snap, yes, like you might cut in a nervous fan or 2 nervous fans or a fan of each team. Like in basketball, you would do a fan of each team a lot, particularly if somebody's like on the free throw line.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, because you want to convey the emotion of that moment to the people at home who aren't there and make them feel like they are there. So yes, that's now whether they do it too often, separate question. But yes, that is a viable thing that you would do.
Makes sense. And we've spent a lot of time critiquing the product for this episode. I want to know, Drew, is there anything you mentioned kind of earlier about some of the on-screen graphics that you saw? Is there anything that you noticed when you watch the WWE that you really are impressed by? That's something that they do very well.
I think one of the things they do really well is when they do their replay boxes. And you've seen it where it's full screen and then the main picture slides into the corner, second box slides in, and there's a replay. It is exceptionally hard in a live action sport where there's not really any stoppages to find the appropriate time to do that. Like boxing, MMA, wrestling, all the same thing. Like the match is ongoing until it's not. It's not even like, hockey has some of that, but even hockey, there's a whistle here or there where you can get your replay in. It is very difficult to find the appropriate time to do that because you are asking the viewer to watch 2 pieces of moving video at the same time, which is hard. And the WWE does it in such a way where they're pretty quick to get there, or they'll wait until something has just happened to do it. Because obviously it's rare in WWE where you would have multiple big moments back to back where you couldn't get it. And if they do, like in the old, back in those days when you used to see the luchadors and they would trade the moonsaults off the ropes or whatever, like they wouldn't start their replay sequence until that was over.
Cyclope, no!
Cyclope!
So I think what they're really good at is they are really good about finding the right moment to do that box, and then they push the less important thing, the live picture, into the background, show you the replays that happen, and they're also really good about leaving that replay frozen until the viewer at home has had time to adjust to, okay, this is not live, this is a replay. Then they roll at full speed with sound. Like, because if you're going to, normally on a replay, you wouldn't start frozen like that. But if you're going to roll at real speed, you need a way to communicate to the viewer without having Michael Cole or whoever say, here's the replay. You need a way to communicate that to people so that they're not just seeing 2 pieces of moving video at the same time. Yeah, they are really good at that, and it's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so before we finish off this entire investigation, whatever you want to call it, you and 3 wrestlers are going to be in a tag team. Who are you picking? Who are your 3 bros? You can do WWE or WCW, but it has to be before Stone Cold.
Has to be before Stone Cold.
Yeah.
Okay, so that rules out Kane. There goes that.
No Kane, no.
And I'm not taking Isaac Yankem.
Hey, he was Diesel before he was Kane, so technically I feel like this all... You can take them.
I'll take Diesel and fake Diesel. No.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a big get.
Let's see. Prior to Stone Cold, I can have any three, right?
Yes. In your team, yes.
All right. Let me chew on this for a second. The first name that jumps to mind is Sergeant Slaughter.
Ooh, I like that. That Cobra Clutch? Oh, that Cobra Clutch is a great move.
People who were like indomitable in their era, right? And there was a period of time where Sergeant Slaughter was completely and totally undefeated. So I want Sergeant Slaughter. I want Macho Man Randy Savage. And can I take early Sting, like pre-Austin Sting?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The best Sting.
Yeah. Then I think top of my head, I think those would be the three.
I'm going to jump in here 1 second, Drew. I'm going to name you somebody who I'm surprised you didn't say. Your favorite, my favorite, Ming.
Oh.
The fact that you did not say Meng means you lose. So thank you very much for joining us. You are going to be visited by Meng tonight. He will destroy your soul, and you will live the rest of your life as a husk.
I never understood why, when it got to WCW, well, like, obviously they had set Ming up as, like, this proto-Umaga character, right? Like, before there was Umaga, there was Ming. And for some reason, they just, like, they thought the Barbarian was going to be the bigger half of that character. and like, listen, like, obviously I'm looking with the benefit of hindsight, right? But on what green earth was Ming not going to be a bigger hit than the Barbarian?
Maybe
there's a real possibility that neither of them was going to be a hit.
Maybe you don't like bring like popularity to the guy who's eating eyeballs, or like just destroy people's lives and eating them for fun. Yeah,
Who's torn people's teeth out, literally reached into their mouth and yanked out teeth. Yeah.
Well, that's also why I didn't pick you back, right? Because that's an uncontrollable character.
Really quick story. There was at one point when Drew and I, we were growing up and we were watching one of the Royal Rumbles, and every single time, Drew, before, I'm sorry, every single time before the buzzer went off, Drew screamed Ming, hoping that Ming wasn't in the WWE. He was not there.
He probably hadn't wrestled in 10 years at that point.
Pick 29.
Oh, man.
Ming shows up and makes his WWE debut. It happened in like 2001. That's exactly what it was. It was the 2001 Royal Rumble because WCW was dying and they had 3 months to live. Ming jumped ship and he showed up.
Here it comes
in the Royal Rumble after like 29 guesses of Drew saying Ming shows up at number 29. Amazing.
Oh, amazing.
It's like Greg with Jeff Jarrett, just constantly.
Except I was right. Except that happened.
So was Drew, 29.
Yeah, Drew's also right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, fine. We're right, brother.
Jeff Jarrett is the modern day Meng.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh.
He was the same generation as me.
A contemporary of Ming.
Oh boy. Do you guys have anything you want to shill while you're here? Drew, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Yeah,
thanks.
Seriously, dude, that was awesome.
Anytime you want to join us again, you're more than welcome. It's been a fantastic time.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk shop. I hope I didn't bore you to death.
Oh no, man, it was
awesome.
It was fantastic.
So much more real information than anything we ever have.
Oh yeah. Jeez. I think you need like a. Oof.
We have to make up crow guys. You actually have some insight.
That's like a
lot of guitars.
Like a six.
A lot of guitars there, Drew.
16 Jago number here. Yeah. Oh yeah, we got that's like a 3 Emmy award going on there. Yeah.
We all have accolades. What do I have? Well, shit, that's some accolades.
I got my wrist thing that I need to wear sometimes because everything hurts. Yeah, you got one of these, Drew? You got one of these, Drew? I don't think so.
I got a little keyboard vacuum. Does that count?
Oh, is that what that is?
I got a screwdriver.
You can hear it revving up.
Drew, thank you so much for hanging out with us, buddy. You've been fantastic. Anytime you want to come on, you're more than welcome. We will hopefully be doing some more fun, especially until we can actually get together and actually do a show again. Doing some more shows,
which is shaping up to be never.
Yeah, absolutely.
More of this shit.
Yeah.
Put a mask on, you dummies.
Wear a mask.
Come on.
Or just follow us here for more weird stuff. Yeah. I've been your host, the man of 1,004 names. Follow me at 1,004 names. Patreon.com/WCWTF Podcast. I should probably put that Patreon thing down there on the links too. Go ahead.
And I think I complimented your screenshot earlier. I regret it.
How would you?
I'm Killer Greg. You can find me at KillerGreg17 on Twitter.
This is Megastar Mark. You can follow me at Megastar Mark, and please give us a follow at WCWTF Podcast on Twitter. We have hilarious Lex Luger pictures every single day. I have now decided to dive into Saturday Night WCW from 1991, finding some weird shit there. You'll see it on our Twitter account. Always a good time. Thank you so much for interacting and following with us. We appreciate everybody. And Drew, we appreciate you for showing up and hanging out with us today. You really made an awesome episode. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, Drew. Thank you so much. Pimp whatever you want.
Yes. You got anything you want to show, Drew?
Nope, not in particular.
Just Drew.
Look up Drew's home address at 127. No, I'm kidding. Drew, thank you so much for hanging out with us. You guys, it's been a fantastic episode. We are going to skip the usual episodes of, next week we're going to do some more Thunder in Paradise. But tonight we're just going to call it a night. It's been a fantastic night. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will catch you guys next time.